Hello and welcome back to the highlights from the Tennent's Men's Premiership and National Leagues. It is one of the biggest weekends in the Premiership so far as we reach the business end of the season, with relegation still on the line and the fight for that last playoff spot between Selkirk and Marr. But first, we are going to go down to the relegation battle, where Musselburgh, GHA and Heriot could all still potentially face the drop into National 1 next year. We'll start off our action at Belgrade, where Musselburgh, who have been bottom of the table for most season, knew that they needed to better GHA's result in order to survive the drop. Your commentator for this one was Andrew Pietri.
Musselburgh had one goal in this game: win at all costs. They had to, in order to preserve their Premiership status, but things got off to a tricky start. Barely 4 minutes had passed when Liam Brims's cross kick was fumbled by fullback Paul Cunningham, offering up the easiest of finishes for Ryan Flett. Andy McLean converted for a 7-0 lead. But Cunningham atoned for his early error when he finished off after Luke Hudson's midfield break had given Borough a decent field position. And due to excellent Borough defence, all the hosts had to show for their dominance over the rest of the first half was a McLean penalty, making it a 10-7 game as the sides went in for the break. Hawks' profligacy came back to bite them early in the second half. Musselburgh started on the front foot. Neil McNairn going close before a knock-on in the tackle brought about a second try for Cunningham. Danny Owenson then knocked over a long-range penalty to extend the lead to 7 points. And with 10 minutes remaining, he repeated the trick, stretching the lead to 10. When referee Campbell blew for full time, relief and jubilation poured over the visitors. They'd done everything they could.
Well, Musselburgh kicked off an hour earlier than our other two games, and we travelled into Philip Hall for our next one, where Heriot's Blues had the advantage with one game more than the other two candidates. However, they were playing Selkirk, who themselves are in the fight for the playoff spot. With Marr having completed all their games, Selkirk knew they needed to get 6 points in order to go ahead of the West Coast team. Selkirk knew the importance of this game, as did Heriot's Blues, and it was the visitors that would find the opening score after just 5 minutes, after centre Robbie Kay burst through the defence before finding the fly half Rory Carmichael, and he did the easiest job of them all, drawing in the final defender before sending the ball out to Charlie Yupp for score, with Graham Wilson converting.
Advantage over! Tackle, move!
Despite a numerical advantage for most of the time with a Selkirk sin bin, Heriots could not get themselves over the line. However, they then eventually found their second try as Charlie Simpson put through Fraser Stainer to score in the corner. A change of shirts at half-time due to the muddy conditions proved to be a good luck charm for Selkirk as they managed to get their first try through James Bett.
Don't go up there. Keep your bind, keep your bind.
But Heriots had other ideas, and John Lascelles went over for their third try as they managed to weather the Selkirk storm.
Back feet, back feet. Still got penalty advantage.
And Heriots managed to cement their position in the Premiership next year with their bonus point try as Danny Dineen went over from this line-out maul. For Heriot's Blues, it was jubilation as they secured their place. However, for Selkirk, it was dismay as they miss out on the playoffs. Well, finally, for GHA, they knew that they needed to get a point more than Musselburgh in order to stay up in the Premiership this season. However, they had the hardest challenge of them all, as Hawick were looking to retain the Bill McLaren Shield and keep the unbeaten record this season alive as the two teams faced off at Mansfield Park. In what has become a classic for Hawick in this year's Premiership, they managed to get their first try from a line-out maul through Fraser Rennick as he went over to start worrying GHA. GHA, however, countered this with a line-out maul of their own, with Archie Falconer being the man to go over to tie the score. Chris Hyde's conversion put GHA in the lead.
Don't change.
The pressure was all on both teams for two different reasons. GHA knowing that they needed to win in order to stay up, and Hawick looking to maintain their unbeaten streak. And the team in red managed to get the lead just before half-time when Andrew Mitchell burst through for the second try. A successful conversion by Kirk Ford meant it was 12-7 going into the break.
Leave it. Twice done.
Kirk Ford's boot was once again instrumental as he put away this penalty to make it 15-7. But Chris Hyde as well had two penalties on his own as he shortened the gap down to just 15-13, proving for a tense finish. News would have been trickling through to Musselburgh and Heriot's Blues of GHA's score so far, and Chris Hyde had the opportunity to put his team in the lead and secure their place in next year's Premiership. But the kick fell just short, and Hawick maintained their unbeaten streak and sent GHA down to National 1. So commiserations there to GHA, who unfortunately are relegated to National 1 next year, and congratulations to Musselburgh and to Heriot's Blues for keeping their place in the Premiership for next season. The action didn't stop there, however, as at Riverside Park, Jed-Forest took on Edinburgh Accies, with Andrew Petrie once again reporting on the match.
A dead rubber only in name. Accies raced into an early lead when Neil Armstrong threaded a neat grubber through and Vincent Hart dribbled the ball over the line, flopping down to score, reminiscent of Tui Pelosi and Jones. After Armstrong punched a decent hole up the middle, Jamie Looms dummied nicely to go over by himself for the second, giving the visitors a 12-point lead. Jed rallied with a fine team try, with Finlay Scott collecting and passing wide before Callum Young eventually finished off. But Accies bit back with a terrific score of their own. Rory Campbell was the man who finished the move after good work from Lewis Wells and Richard Thompson. Jed were reduced to 14 on the half hour, but that didn't stop them when Robbie Shura-Gibb went in under the posts. And that was the final score of the first half, but there was still plenty to come in the second as the match descended into a real mud bowl. It took 4 minutes for Accies to get their bonus point try when Cameron Bain burst off the back of a maul to dive over unchallenged.
Okay, use it now. Use it. 5, don't move. He's broken.
But once again, Jed hit straight back. Gregor Young found Mason Cullen on a nice line, and the fullback scampered in for his 11th try of the season. Another Jed card put them down to 13, and Accies took full advantage, stretching the play wide to put Lewis Wells into the corner. There was still time for another home score though. Matthew Atkinson barged forward, creating a chance for Paulo Ferreira, allegedly playing his last game before retirement, to score one last time. And so it finished. Jed-Forest 28, Edinburgh Accies 33.
So only the 4 games took place this weekend. However, 2 weeks ago, as Scotland were warming up to take on England at Twickenham, Currie Chieftains took on Marr in a repeat of last year's final.
Currie struck first when Jamie Forbes slotted away this penalty to give the home side a 3-0 advantage. But as similar to last year's final, Marr would be the first to cross the whitewash when Jake Jacobson went over for the first try of the game. But that would be Marr's only points of the match, as James McCaig appeared on the opposite wing from where he should be to go in for Currie's first try of the match. And with Marr down to 14 men when Colin Sturgeon was shown a yellow card for a deliberate knock-on, they made the numerical advantage count as Cody McGovern went in for his 13th try of the season. However, those were the only tries of the game, as it proved to be a slow second half for both sides. Jamie Forbes slotted away 2 penalties, however, to increase Currie's advantage. Currie got retribution for last year's final and secured a home playoff spot, while Marr had to wait for Selkirk's results, but have secured that playoff. And so this is how the table now looks with 1 regular season week to go. GHA unfortunately have been relegated into National 1. They are 3 points behind Musselburgh and Heriot's Blues. Jed-Forest go ahead of Glasgow Hawks, however the Glasgow side can still finish the season in 6th, depending on the results next week. Hawick and Currie Chieftains both confirm their spots as 1st and 2nd respectively, and Marr will finish in the playoff spots thanks to Selkirk's loss. The final weekend of regular season fixtures then now look like this. Currie Chieftains will play Selkirk, while Glasgow Hawks will host unbeaten Hawick, who will look to go the entire regular season unbeaten. And there's a capital derby as Heriot's Blues take on Edinburgh Accies.
So now with GHA's relegation confirmed, the question now is who will be taking their spot in the Premiership for next season. The title race has been close between a couple of teams, with currently Kelso and Ayr leading the charge. However, hot on both their tails is Melrose, who took on Biggar at the Greenyards.
It wasn't the starts at the Greenyards that Melrose would have wanted, as Craig Borthwick went over for Biggar's first try, unconverted, to give them a 5-0 lead. It took the home side until the 15-minute mark to get on the score sheet when David Colvine slotted away this penalty. But eventually they would get into the swing of things when Connor Spence went over for their first try of the match. This did not set Biggar back, however, as Andrew Orr went over for their second try as they looked to get back into the lead. But despite that, David Colvine instead decided to opt for the sticks as he put away this penalty to make it 11-10. And into the second half it would be Bruce Covine that would go over to extend Melrose's lead. The gap, however, was shortened to just 3 points as Biggar decided to opt for the post and scored this penalty. But this was instead counteracted by David Cobine's first penalty of the day. And Donald Crawford managed to get their third try of the day after chasing down this kick to score in the corner. And the game was put beyond all doubt when Donald Crawford got his second try of the day, intercepting this pass to go in for the easiest of tries and easiest of bonus points. Melrose would walk away from the Green Yards with the 5-point victory. Across at Millbrae, it was Ayr that managed to get the win over Dundee Rugby, winning by 29 points to 13 and keeping their title hopes alive. Down at Nidderdale, it was a strong performance from Gala as they got the win 27-5 over Highland. Looking at the relegation battle, and Watsonians have now climbed away from GHK thanks to their 32-19 win over the Glasgow side at Myerside. And in the battle between the bottom two, Aberdeen Grammar managed to complete one of the greatest comebacks we have seen this season, as they came from 17-0 down to win 26-24 at Inverleith. Stuart's Melville are now without a win from the opening game of the season. And finally, it was a dominating performance for Kelso as they came away from Bridge Hall with a 41-19 win over Stirling County, whose relegation fears are starting to come even stronger. So the race for promotion now heats up with Kelso top of the table, 3 points ahead of Ayr. Melrose 6 points behind them, each with 5 games left. Gala are also hot on the table of Melrose in 4th place. And at the bottom of the table, Aberdeen Grammar's chances of survival have been given a massive boost, although they do still find themselves 12 points behind Stirling County, albeit with a game in hand. Stirling County themselves are only 2 points behind GHK. It is a big week at the bottom and top of the table, with Biggar taking on Watsonians and Dundee Rugby taking on Aberdeen Grammar. Gala will take on Stuart's Melville, while GHK take on High Flying Ayr. Highland will host Stirling County, and it's a big battle between 1st and 3rd as Kelso play Melrose in a Borders derby at Poynter Park. As we get into the business end of the season in Tennent's Men's National 2, some results are changing the shape of the table in many different ways. Berwick's win 62 points leaves Cartha struggling in the fight for survival. Boroughmuir as well came short against Lasswade, while Falkirk beat bottom of the table Hamilton Bulls as they look set to go down. Glasgow Accies, however, suffered a huge blow in their challenge for promotion as they lost 13-5 to Peebles. For Newton Stewart, it was a 37-17 win against Kirkcaldy, and for Preston Lodge, it was a 24-17 win against Dumfries Saints. And so now the top of the table are Newton Stewart, who sit on 63 points, 3 ahead of Falkirk, while Glasgow Accies now are 5 points behind the league leaders, albeit they have a game in hand. Lasswade also seem to be in the fight now for relegation, as they are only 2 points ahead of Dumfries Saints. Hamilton Bulls are still some way off the bottom of the table, as they are still searching for only their 2nd win of the season. They'll be looking to get that win as they take on Preston Lodge this weekend. Elsewhere, Cartha Queen's Park hosts Glasgow Accies and Dumfries Saints host Newton Stewart. Kirkcaldy will take on Berwick and Lasswade will take on Falkirk, and Peebles will host Boroughmuir. And in Tennent's Men's National 3, it was a huge blow for West of Scotland as they lost 43-12 against Howe Fife. Gordonians, on the other hand, keep their place at the top of the table unbeaten as they won 82-0 against bottom of the table Royal High. Allen Glens as well got a 54-5 win over Murrayfield Wanderers, while Greenwich Wanderers fell short against Orkney. Finally, there was only one try for Perthshire and White Craigs as they fell short to Strathmore and Hillhead Jordan Hill respectively. Gordonians keep themselves in the driving seat for top of the table with 15 wins from 15. Hillhead Jordan Hill now also go above West of Scotland thanks to that win, 61 points to West of Scotland's 59. Allinglen still keep themselves as well in the race for promotion. At the bottom of the table, however, Perthshire, Greenock Wanderers and Royal High will be desperate to look for form. Perthshire will take on bottom of the table Royal High, however, in the capital next week. Hillhead Jordan Hill will take on top of the table Gordonians. Murrayfield Wanderers will be at home to White Craigs. Orkney welcome Allinglen as well to the north, while Strathmore will take on Howe Fife and West of Scotland will take on Greenock Wanderers.
And so that is it for another weekend of Tennent's Men's Premiership and National League action. We have our playoff spots confirmed, with Hawick taking on Marr at Mansfield Park and Currie Chieftains taking on Edinburgh Accies at Maleny Park. And once again, commiserations to GHA, who will be dropping out of the division next year. And in National 1, the title fight is getting close between the top three. Who will take that last spot in the Premiership for next season? Join us next week. We'll be rounding up this weekend's 3 Premiership matches and all the action from Tennent's Men's National 1, 2 and 3. We'll see you then.